Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Soccer Talk. I'm your host, Joe Prince Wright, over here in England. As you can see, I'm joined by Nick Mendola in Buffalo, New York, and Andy Edwards in Kansas City. Gents, time to recap and look forward to what's coming up in and around the Premier League. Another great weekend. I have to say, it was a real highlight for me to have the supporters back in the stadiums. I was at Chelsea and Tottenham, and even though it was only 2,000 fans, they made a heck of a lot of noise, and it was just kind of heartwarming to see that a little smidgen of normality resumed in a very safe manner for these Premier League games. So first time in 9 months to see some fans, and I love that. So Nick, what did you enjoy from the past few days of Premier League action, mate?
I just kind of liked hearing the noises that came from the crowd in situations that you can't program, right? So as much as the crowd noise was comforting when fans weren't there, the random kind of yells when players dove or something like that, or just the general banter you got where you didn't quite understand why there was a rise in the tension or something might be happening outside the scene. I didn't just have to rely on your pictures, which was kind of nice. So yeah, it was great to have the fans back. I hope everybody was being safe so we can get more back eventually.
Definitely. I think for me, it was really helpful when I was writing my pieces on Pro Soccer Talk from the stadiums, because I've had to rely on, I can't miss anything. But now I can look down at my laptop a bit more and listen to crowd noises to see when I should look up if someone is in on goal. So selfishly, that was very helpful. So thank you to the fans who turned up for doing that for me. Andy, what about you, mate? What did you enjoy from around the Premier League?
Yeah, I hate to be boring and give the same answer as both of you guys, but it was kind of an eye-opening experience this weekend. Just what the fans, what the fans bring because you enjoy it every week. But it's kind of hard to appreciate it, I guess, because it's always been there. It's never been taken away in this way. And so then to get it back just made it seem like, oh, wow, that it's like a warm blanket, that you wrap around yourself. And just it feels really good. It felt good to the ears and everything. And I think my biggest takeaway, both you kind of mentioned it, was the English. They're a loud people. They really are. they know how to make your people are very loud in a good way. And I think you made the point on Twitter. The clubs with the smaller stadiums, an advantage right now. Fewer people, but a smaller ground. The noise stays in there. It echoes around in a different way. And I think Brighton was probably the one on Monday that solidified that point for me.
The English are loud. I'll take that as a compliment, lads. And yeah, as always, it's an absolute pleasure to chat with you guys about everything in the soccer world. So if you're new to Pro Soccer Talk, three of us catch up for a transatlantic chat. We have a beer and a drink, so cheers, boys. And let's get things kicked off this week. Focusing on three things we learned from around the Premier League. I'm going to go first. I put my thoughts and my sort of details about what it was like to be in stadiums with fans again up on Pro Soccer Talk on NBCSports.com. For me, it was, as we said, heartwarming and brilliant to have it back in a very safe and controlled manner. But it was really cool to see fans experience what journalists have been experiencing for the last few months in terms of, I was sat at Tottenham, North London derby against Arsenal. There were some Spurs fans sat about 10 seats behind me, and they were treating it as if it was a Sunday League pub game. It was, the one guy behind me was telling Sergio Red, there's a man on your shoulder, look left, hold the line. Gareth, get stripped, you're coming on soon, son, and like things like this. And it was great to see, and Bale laughed back at him, and there was a real connection, I think, between the fans that were there and the players, and probably a greater connection given everything that's gone on and how long we've gone without fans inside stadiums. So it was really cool to see that greater appreciation. And for me, it felt safe. I felt myself looking around thinking, how is this going to work? In Stamford Bridge, it seemed really loud because there were 40,000 capacity stadium, 2,000 fans in there. It's quite enclosed, whereas Tottenham's quite vast. Obviously, an extra 20,000 seats. Didn't feel quite as loud, but it was still good. Don't get me wrong. So it's going to be interesting to see how it can develop now, how the tier system goes in the UK. 4,000 fans are allowed in. And I know the Premier League's doing a great job. They're sort of over preparing for what's needed under UK government restrictions. They're saying you have to wear masks at all time, where in the lower leagues you don't have to do that if you're sat down. They're saying temperature checks, lots of other things in and around the stadium. So they're being ultra cautious. There's a lot of messages over the PA system and on screens to remind fans. So I felt very safe in the stadiums with fans being back, albeit in a small number. And I think looking around, I was saying to myself, I could easily fit 15 to 20,000 people in Stamford Bridge and maybe even a few more at Tottenham Stadium and be okay with that from a very controlled manner. So I loved it. It was an absolute pleasure and a privilege to be there with fans. It has been a privilege to be there with no fans and to get that, behind the scenes look. But there's no doubt that it's so much better hearing that banter and the chants and Chelsea's fans heckling the Leeds players throughout was another highlight, I guess you could say. And I think even the Leeds players who were getting heckled enjoyed having someone there to watch them play again. So, Nick, I know you enjoyed some of the big performances from some of those really good attacking units this weekend, didn't you?
I did. And what's interesting to me is we always talk about chances generated. And in terms of Chelsea and Man City, these are two teams that have been doing it for a couple of years now. Joe, you famously pointed out a few times last year, rightly so, that if Chelsea just had some finish, maybe they would have been significantly higher up on the table, not just a little bit. And when Pulisic slid that ball into the goal, I got excited to make some attacking notes. I thought, this is what we're going to talk about this week. And then I went back and looked at the numbers. The numbers are fine. The defense is incredible. Both Chelsea and Man City in the Champions League have allowed 1 goal each in the group stage. Liverpool in a tougher group has allowed, attacking-wise, has allowed 2. And then you look at the Premier League numbers, and both Man City and Chelsea have maybe quietly really, really put it together. City has allowed 4 goals since the draw against Leeds. Chelsea has allowed 2 since the 3-3 with Saints. I mean, they're figuring it out. And yes, they had maybe the easiest schedules of the big teams that were going into the congested period. But given how many matches were on the docket, guys, how they've done, how Spurs have done, how Liverpool's done, super impressive.
Very impressive. And I think you mentioned it there. The attacking lineups these teams have, we focus on that a lot because there's so many superstar players. And we will focus on it later on today on Pro Soccer Talk. But it's to me, Edouard Mendy coming and go for Chelsea has been brilliant, and then Diaz at City obviously has really been brilliant. I mean, those are 2 players where you can clearly see that everyone around them is a lot more comfortable defensively. So yeah, it's amazing how much difference one player can make, right? I mean, Andy, I know you're going to talk about how much difference quite a few players can make because Liverpool keep churning out great results, even though they're missing so many star names.
Yeah, they are. And I think Jurgen Klopp is doing just a fantastic job with this team at the moment, kind of getting them day by day. It's not a game by game thing. It feels like it's day by day in between those games. I think it's probably time for everybody to just be absolutely terrified of Liverpool again at this point. The run of results that they're on at the moment, ever since they drew 2-2 with Everton in the Merseyside derby, they have been on an absolute tear. And I was looking at some of the numbers after their just absolutely dominant win over Wolves, 4-0 at Anfield on the weekend. Fans back in the stadium, welcoming the champions for the first time ever, as Premier League champions. And so I looked at some of the numbers. Just 4 goals conceded in the last 6 Premier League games since Virgil van Dijk went down with his injury. It began immediately after that injury. I think Klopp had to figure out something a little bit different tactically. They had to strike a better balance between attack and defense. In the 6 games before, in the 5 games before Van Dijk got injured, 14 goals conceded. That's very, very impressive, but even more so, 4 clean sheets in those 6 games. It's not just that they're limiting the number of goals, it's that they're not giving up goals. They've given up 2 goals during that time. It's so impressive what they're doing at the moment with considering the number of players that are out. How many teams would lose 1 or 2 of those caliber players and their season would crumble? Liverpool have lost 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, and it just doesn't matter.
It's brilliant to see. I mean, some of the youngsters coming in, Kelleher in goal, that was pretty cool to see such a young kid coming in and making key saves at big moments and just being controlled and coming out for crosses. And, Curtis Jones, Neco Williams, that next generation there in Liverpool, it's impressive to see that Klopp has that much faith in them now. And maybe he always did, but no one else seemed to. So there's a real continuation there. And Liverpool, if they don't win the title, they're going to be there or thereabouts this season because their squad is strong. They're through in Europe, so now they can focus on the league. And a few weeks ago, I don't think many of us would have said that because of the amount of injuries to key players, especially at the back. So you got to give Liverpool a massive pat on the back for coming through this, right, Nick?
Yeah, and I was going to say, just look ahead to their festive fixtures, and we know that can be chaos for everyone, but there's one big game on their schedule. One. And it's Spurs on a Wednesday in a couple of weeks. But after Michelin tomorrow, it's Fulham, Palace, West Brom, before two genuine contenders in Newcastle and Saints. So, I mean, literally, joking aside, by the time they get to January 2nd at St. Mary's, depending on how they navigate the Tottenham challenge, where are you seeing them not taking points?
Yeah, they are, for many people, I think, the clear front runners, even though Tottenham fans maybe wouldn't agree with that right now. But, along with Man City, who are just ominously clicking through the gears. Andy, I know that's something you spoke about, write them off at your peril a few weeks ago. So you were big on Man City, and now we're seeing, as Nick mentions, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, Tottenham. I mean, we could have a 5 or 6 horse title race here. And I'm not going to mention what Mourinho said about Spurs being a pony, because they do look like a thoroughbred at the moment, the way they're just getting past teams, getting the job done, and then Kane and Son up front are obviously the X factor for Spurs. So
Joe, I saw Mourinho in the press conference, you apologized for the pony line, and he said it was okay. So he's accepted your apology. That's a big thing.
I know. I felt bad because I asked Mourinho about what kind of horse for Tottenham in this title race, and then for the last week, he's basically become an equine expert here in the UK. Every interview he's done, he's been asked about horses and jockeys, and so it was good to at least. Maybe I'll bring it up later in the season when we get a bit further in the final furlong, shall we say, of the Premier League title race. Yeah, so. That's what we learned in the Premier League this week. A lot's going on. The title race, everyone's jockeying for position. I'm going to stop with the horse racing analogies now. But it's a very exciting time as we head in towards that busy, festive period across the Premier League. Switching gears now, we're going to focus on the big breaking news in the Premier League, and that's that Paul Pogba, his agent, Mino Raiola, has come out and said he wants to leave Manchester United and he wants to leave in January. Now I'm thinking, is this the right time, gents? I mean, this is something that Pogba and Raiola have said pretty much on and off for the last couple of years. He hasn't been happy at United, hasn't been that key man who really, they give him the ball and week in, week out, he delivers the goods. He's done some good things, some great goals and assists, but consistently hasn't been handed the keys to this Man United midfield. I'm not sure if January is the right time for him to move. It's definitely the power move from Raiola to say, hey, look, you either give us a huge new contract or there's going to be clubs lining up. And they've made the world now see that he's ready to leave on a free contract, leave on a free transfer to see out his contract. And his market value now has diminished massively. So that's a big problem for Manchester United. I just want to read out some of the quotes from Raiola. So, as he said himself, there's no beating about the bush here. It's better to speak out clearly, look forward, and avoid wasting time to find culprits. Paul is unhappy at Manchester United. He can't manage to express himself like he wants to and like people expect him to. He needs to change team. He needs a change of scenery. He has a contract that will expire in a year and a half, but the best solution for all parties is a transfer in the next window. I mean, wow. I mean, what do we make of this? I mean, Andy, I see you laughing along there. Is this the right time for Pogba to go from Manchester United? Because this saga seems to come on strongly pretty much every 6 months with Pogba's future at Old Trafford, doesn't it?
There is so much blame to go around to everybody involved with Paul Pogba at Manchester United. And listening to that quote from Raiola, I'm left wondering, I wonder if Raiola is willing to consider that he also shares some blame in this situation. And but you're both shaking your head. And absolutely the answer is no. Like, there is no part of his body that even thought to consider, are we handling this the right way? Is this the best way to be professionals and go about this? Because there is blame on part of the club, in the team that has been put around him, that the talent doesn't fit together right. There is blame on the multiple managers that he has had at Manchester United the second time around, that he has been used wrongly. There is blame on Pogba for just simply not dragging the performances out of himself that a player of his caliber should be doing, whether in the right situation or the wrong situation. There is obviously a ton of blame on Raiola for the public nature and the way that things have been handled, because you're right, it's every 6 months that this pops up. Every time the window is about to open, we're having this conversation. Everybody is to blame for this, and I don't know that anybody's willing to accept their role in what has been, it's going to go down as just an absolutely wasted 3 or 4 years now that Pogba has been at Manchester United. He should have just stayed at Juventus. Look how good that team was. Look how good he was in that team. It feels like what should have been the very best years of his career have just been absolutely wasted in and out of a Manchester United team that is nowhere near winning anything.
Nick, before I come to you, I just want to say the timing of this statement is probably something that will annoy Manchester United and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. It came just before the big Champions League game against RB Leipzig, just before the Manchester derby, just after Paul Pogba scored an absolute belter away at West Ham to spark that comeback. So again, in many ways, Raiola knew that Pogba was in a powerful position. Whether Pogba knew he was going to come out and say this remains to be seen. I would suggest that if he didn't know that, then he should probably change agents, because they're pretty close, it would seem, over the years, and how he's maneuvered his career and contracts at Juve and United. But Nick, does this seem like the inevitable ending? Do we think there is a chance he stays at United here and Raiola's working that magic for a new contract and a new deal?
I don't think so. It's possible, of course. Avoid absolutes, I was taught in the great English department at the University of Buffalo. But for me, Joe, I'm looking at this, and I hate to be conspiratorial, but it feels like maybe it happens if Ole's gone, and what better way to do it than the week of 2 of the biggest games of their season. But really, I'm looking at what Neymar said last week about wanting to play with Messi. I'm looking at the rumors of Ronaldo potentially looking at an old home, or a new home, excuse me. And now I'm thinking about Paul Pogba at a discounted rate because of the statement. And I'm wondering, is this the LeBron super team coming to PSG or another place? And I just can't help but think that. And how glorious could that be? Is there a way to make that happen where we see a Messi and a Neymar and a Pogba together because Mbappe's been sold somewhere? So I don't know. I'm just thinking about that, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, right? If he does leave Manchester United and people know he's going to be available on a free transfer 6 to 12 months down the line, which club is going to stump up the cash in January, especially given the current situation with finances across even the best and biggest clubs in Europe? I mean, Juventus, PSG, Real Madrid, perhaps with the Zidane link up, but who knows how long Zidane is going to be at Real Madrid for. But Raiola has come up with another update as well in Tuttosport and the Italian press, and said maybe Juventus could be his next destination. Why not? Among other things, the relationship with the club and the former teammates is excellent. So again, who did he play with at Juventus? Andrea Pirlo. Who's the current manager of Juventus? Andrea Pirlo. So, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that Pogba has maybe been angling for this for a while. Like Nick said, it seems like the perfect timing in terms of, can he get out while maybe the blame isn't on him at Manchester United? A lot of that blame might go on Solskjaer for this situation. But Andy, is there any other destination that would really stick out for where on earth Pogba would end up next?
When you're talking about a player of that caliber and that value and those wages and that transfer, no, there's not. There are 4, maybe 5 clubs in the world that can afford the fee and the contract for a player like this. You mentioned 4 of them there, throwing in Barcelona as well. I guess Bayern Munich probably would have the financial firepower to do so, but it doesn't seem like a likely Paul Pogba in the German, the German society, I don't think probably would not go over the very, very best. They wouldn't take to him too quickly. And so it's very limited. And so even before Raiola comes out and says these things, the negotiating power for United is limited because there are so few destinations that he could end up going. So it's a really difficult situation for everybody involved. I think Juventus is probably the best spot because out of those four, realistic options, they're the most, I guess, stable. And then they have everything in place to plug him straight into the team and go on and win a title and compete for a Champions League and everything. If we're talking about this season, obviously he wouldn't be eligible for Champions League, but it's just, I come back to the point. He should have never left. He had the absolute perfect setup. And I know you're not doing it in the biggest league in the world, but you're going to win 10 Serie A titles in a row. You'll probably grab a couple Champions Leagues in there as well. It was just the perfect place. And I don't think you probably fully appreciate how good you have it until you leave and you go somewhere else and you see that it's not always going to be like that everywhere you go. The system was built around him at Juve, and it's not been done at United. And that's probably the biggest indictment on the club and the managers that United have had.
And I think for Pogba, like that, his formative years were at Juve. So he's always spoke fondly about his time in Turin and how he grew up as a player. Obviously, he was at Manchester United before and then left on a free transfer. And then now he's maybe going to do that again if he doesn't get the move in January. So that would be pretty incredible to do that twice to Manchester United. Somewhere Sir Alex Ferguson is spitting out his cup of tea. I can see it already. But when we think about his 4 years, to sum this up, Nick, it's 4 years at Manchester United. He arrived in 2016 when Mourinho was the manager. Of course, he's an incredibly talented player. He is almost a generational talent. Won the World Cup with France. As we said, at Juve was brilliant. How would you sum up his 4 years at Manchester United? Has it been a success or has it been a resounding failure or maybe somewhere just in between?
Just in between. Joe, I don't know. And the reason I say that is because he hasn't delivered for sure, but Manchester United has been a bit of a mess. And Ed Woodward, for whatever you want to say about how they've brought players in, they certainly haven't been the right ones. We talked when Donny van de Beek came in the summer and we said, why? Is this a Pogba replacement? Maybe, but where is the fit? We see all the wings they chased as well in the summer. And is that all reactive? Is it not being proactive? And so part of me, as Andy said, there's so much blame to go around that it's difficult to put a lot on the player. But I will say this, here's what I will put on him. Raiola, I think we were writing years ago that this guy's just got to get a new agent. And I realize he's a power broker, but when Raiola wakes up in the morning, he doesn't think about Manchester, to your point, he doesn't think about Manchester United's fixture list. He thinks about how am I going to put the most money in my pocket under the guise of I'm looking out for my clients. And so when he wasn't thinking to himself, this is when I'll stick it in. He was thinking, today's a good day to put myself in the news. So that's who I'm going to put it on. And there aren't too many agents I would say that about. It's just, it's the super agent. And problematically speaking, that's how I'll dodge your question.
Very expertly dodged there. And I'm going to finish up with my final point on this. I think Pogba is one of those players that in a wonderful team, like he was in at Juventus and like he was in with the French national team as well. When he is not the main man, he is allowed that freedom to express himself and be that X factor in a team that can, play the incredible passes, can connect midfield with attack, can play with that flair and flamboyance that he has on and off the pitch. And I just don't think he's ever been in a situation at Manchester United to show that. And I think it was almost a pretty bad situation from almost the first season he was there. And it never truly recovered. And I think it's better for everyone now if he does move on. I don't know if he does move on in January, but Andy, I can see you got one more point on this. I'm going to pass it over to you quickly. But
I want to ask you a question, Joe. Do you think that the Premier League, and not the league itself, but the style and the quality that is there, do you think that the Premier League allows for room to a player to express some of those things at the level of a Paul Pogba because it's so intense, it's so competitive that it's so results driven?
Yeah, you're right. I think it's probably a bad fit for him as a league, and maybe that was the reason why Ferguson allowed him to leave for Juventus in the first place. They weren't happy about it, but they could have maybe done something about it. So I think the Premier League probably isn't the best fit for him. And we've seen it on the international stage. That's generally where he puts in his best performances for France. And Yeah, I think for another thing as well, as soon as Bruno Fernandes arrived at Manchester United, Pogba knew the writing's on the wall. My time up is up here, and the number 10 for many, many years to come is going to be Bruno Fernandes at United. So this is Pogba. The end game is in sight, but this started a long time ago, right? 12, 18 months, maybe even 2 years ago. He knew what was coming. So we'll keep you updated on Pro Soccer Talk and NBCSports.com and the latest news on Paul Pogba and whatever Mino Raiola has got to say. I'm sure he's going to have a lot to say between now and the January transfer window. And the saga rolls on with Paul Pogba. Focusing on some more big news from around the Premier League, I want to break out sort of a discussion here, lads, because as I mentioned, I was at Tottenham Arsenal at the weekend for the big North London derby win for Spurs. Son scored an absolute worldie, set up by Harry Kane. Harry Kane then scored a beauty, set up by Son. Kane has 10 assists so far this season in the Premier League. Son has 10 goals. And they almost have that telepathic understanding, don't they? They're not really a traditional duo, but they seem to find each other on the pitch. So,
Arsenal have 10 goals as well. Just wanted to point that out.
There you go. I knew you had to get in with that. Yeah. So I'm going to ask the question, do Tottenham have the best forward line in the Premier League right now? And if they don't, then who does? Who's the best forward line in the Premier League at the moment? Nick, go with you first. Any sort of, yeah, this is an easy question, right?
Yeah, listen, I would say in terms of strictly forward lines, it's challenging to compare 2 to 3, but it's either them or Liverpool. I can't get past Salah and Mane being on the same team, both capable of driving an attack in the final third. And Mohamed Salah, I think, is in danger of slipping back to being, if possible, slightly underrated. I don't know. Maybe, again, I think I've mentioned this before because of the love Mane understandably got, because of Liverpool fans' undying devotion to saying that Firmino's super underrated, which might be possible. Liverpool's right there. I think Man City's strength comes from their midfield. And so as good as their attackers are, I like to point to that, especially when you mention, a Kevin De Bruyne. So yeah, it's hard for me to go against Liverpool, but Tottenham right now is just a different beast. You look at the advanced stats metrics, and they're the only team with 2 players besides Chelsea's backs in that discussion to be in the best 11. And that's saying something in this league.
Andy, Tottenham are the best forward line, or are you looking at Chelsea or even Manchester United and the wealth of attacking talents they have?
I hate being boring and agreeing, but Liverpool's not even a 3; it's a 4 now with Diogo Jota. Like the riches that Liverpool have in the attacking half of the field, it's absolutely incredible. And I don't think you can. It's very difficult to point to somebody else for Spurs that you would even be willing to consider putting into the same sentence as Son and Kane right now. Like, don't speak anybody else's name in the same sentence as those two, because they are just on a different level from anybody else. I think probably, I don't know, 1-2 in player of the season, tracking that we'll get to at the end of the month again. But it's just, you can't compete with Liverpool and what they have up top with those 4 players now. They are, I think that will be what kind of drags them over the line if they need dragging. They probably won't, but that will get them to the title again this season. But we're going to look at the Spurs season and say, this was genuinely the season for the 4th year in a row when Harry Kane became world class. It seems like every year we have this conversation again that, this is his breakout season. This is even better than the last one. So while they are absolutely incredible and they look unstoppable at the moment, I would still take the quartet at Liverpool over the duo at Tottenham.
That's true. And they are world-class. Mourinho said that in his post-game press conference, Son and Kane. And what I love about those two is that, yes, they score goals, incredible assists, great going forward. But Harry Kane was back in his own 6-yard box, clearing corners with headers. Son was working his tail off, getting back down the wing and then playing behind Kane and just everywhere. So they give you so much on both sides of the ball. You mentioned the quartet there, and I'm thinking I'm going to kind of play devil's advocate a little bit here. What about Manchester United's front 4? If they're all fit and firing all cylinders, you've got Cavani up top, Bruno Fernandes as the number 10, and then Rashford and Martial or Greenwood either side of them. On their day, is there an argument to be made that they have the best forward line in the Premier League?
There's a lot of collective talent there, but I don't know that it is a
As
unit in the way that Liverpool is, or the way that Son and Kane are, to get a two-man unit essentially for Spurs up top. Like if one of those two goes down, the season might be over. United have so much talent, and that's the whole squad. It's just this player's available, sign him, and so they sign him.
Before the season, I would have probably said Arsenal, but we've all seen their struggles with Aubameyang and Lacazette and others up top. And from outside the top six, maybe looking at Everton with Richarlison, James, and Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Maybe even Aston Villa with Trezeguet and Watkins and Grealish. And then maybe Southampton, Shea Adams, Danny Ings are having a great season. So there are a lot of good attacking lines across the Premier League, forward units. But Tottenham are probably the most informed. But Liverpool, it seems, have the depth and sort of that great balance of pace, power, creativity, and just that understanding. And they've played together a long time, so it makes a lot of sense. But I'm sure this is going to be a discussion that you guys want to get involved in the comments section. So don't be afraid, don't be shy. Let us know who you think's the best forward partnership or forward unit in the Premier League. I'm sure you're all going to agree. So just like we did, right, gents? Okay, so now it's time to preview Match Week 12 in the Premier League over at ProSoccerTalk on NBCSports.com. We'll have you covered with team news, previews, stream links, how to watch all these games across the USA. Big one coming up, lads, on Big NBC on Saturday at 12:30 Eastern. Manchester United against Manchester City. Small matter of the Manchester derby. United had City's number last year. They beat them twice. I think that kind of comes with the way they play, right? On the counter, soak up pressure. City perhaps weren't that clinical in those games. United hit them on the counter. I'm really looking forward to seeing how City's defence can cope with Cavani or Rashford, with Diaz. They've been much improved at the back. Nick, I know you've mentioned that. But this, to me, is maybe not going to be quite as close as last season in the Manchester derby. I think City have overtaken Man United again, and they will clearly be the favourites heading into this weekend, right, Nick?
Yeah, I have to think so. And I look to something you said in the last segment about Pogba, and maybe the way he needed to succeed and the way Bruno Fernandes is succeeding is what Pep Guardiola has done with Kevin De Bruyne at Man City. He has publicly said, I let him do his thing. And De Bruyne said, I like that he lets me do my thing. And you take a player of that, you take a player of that creative skill and you just say, look, I do want you to get involved in the tackle and I do want you to be responsible, but just find your spaces. And it's something that very different players, but it's something that that Pep did with Lionel Messi and Messi has done for the next 10 years after that at Barcelona. You're our best player. You have some freedom here. Obviously, way different players. Messi's the best player of all time, but Pep knows how to give freedom, and maybe Ole has not quite learned that yet.
Yeah, Joe, I just want... Yeah, real quick. Nick and I have been talking off camera. We'd like a little more freedom to do our thing around PST as well. Yeah. So,
unfortunately, that's just not the way we work. We're a high press situation, 4-2-2-2. So sorry, lads.
It was worth a try.
Everton, Chelsea, Nick. On that point, what do you got on that? That's going to be a sneaky good game, right?
It is definitely going to be a sneaky good game. And we were all talking yesterday. We had a meeting that everybody wishes they could attend, where we talked about how. Carlo Ancelotti, when he was at Chelsea, he was the guy who put together a 100-goal season for Chelsea. He was very explosive with them. I think this has the capacity. As much as I said, Chelsea has defended really well. Richarlison is the type of player who can unlock things. James can unlock things. Calvert-Lewin has been absolutely clinical. We'd be talking about all three a lot more if the rest of the team at Everton was delivering the goods. So I think Everton's going to be fine this year. They weren't expected to really, really contend, but this is still a game on their schedule that is going to be having a lot of people judging them. And Carlo's going to want it going up against his old pal Frank Lampard. I'm really excited for this game. I think it could be one of the matches of the weekend, if not the match, even with the Manchester Derby in play.
And Chelsea are flying, obviously Pulisic back scoring goals and so many attacking weapons there for the Blues. And they're better at the back. That's the big thing for them. So interesting game there at Goodison Park. And Andy, finish us off with Crystal Palace against Tottenham. Spurs, if they win again, they stay top. I mean, Mourinho just can't do any wrong right now, can he?
Not at the moment. I mean, eventually, maybe year 3 is when it'll all fall apart. It seems to be the way. But no, I think he is very content to grind these games out and keep clean sheets first and foremost. With Son and Kane in the form that they're in, I think he trusts that on their own they can go get them a goal or two in most games. But this is a pretty big one for Spurs, because if you look at their upcoming schedule, Nick highlighted earlier Liverpool's cushy festive period schedule, not the same for Spurs. Liverpool coming up next after Crystal Palace, Leicester at home, and Wolves away. It's a very tricky period when the games are weekend, midweek, so they absolutely have to have this one. And Crystal Palace, I'm very worried about them. They're 6th from bottom in expected goals for, 6th from bottom in expected goals against. They've not been good on either end of the field, and somehow they've gotten some results. I see a lot of regression coming from them over the next couple of months of the season, and they could just about fall into, I think, a relegation battle.
Yeah, Wilfried Zaha might bail them out, but I like that you challenge your inner Jose Mourinho there to make a lot of excuses for Tottenham in the coming weeks over the festive period. So Fulham, Liverpool, Arsenal, Burnley, Wolves, Villa, some other big games coming up this weekend. Can't wait to watch them along with you guys. So all that's left for me to say is thanks for joining us for Pro Soccer Talk, and we'll speak to you all very soon indeed. Cheers, lads.
Hi there, I'm Rebecca Lowe. Make sure you subscribe to watch highlights all season long, and always join us every weekend at 7 a.m. on NBCSN for Premier League mornings. Plus, make sure you subscribe to Peacock Premium as well, where you can watch exclusively live 175 games and same-day on-demand replays of all 380 Premier League matches as well.